I love business. And if we're having, coffee in a cafe, I'm really happy talking to people about their business, their marketing, their product development, what they're doing, how they're recruiting, all those kind of things. I'd much rather do that than talk about the price of a loaf of bread or whatever. I can't help it. I think it's interesting when you talk about sacrifice, because I do see it in business, and I think that's really, really sad. We ended up losing everything. And it wasn't something that we could see, that we could foresee happening. No matter what seems like the end, it could just be the beginning of something that you might never have anticipated. I just knew that was the path I wanted to follow.
Jan, thank you very much for joining the podcast Success, No Sacrifice. It is great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Pawel. I'm very honoured to be your guest.
Thank you so much once again. Let me say a few words about yourself. First and foremost, yes, you are my dear friend, and I really appreciate you being here with me. You are the accomplished businesswoman, entrepreneur, and mentor, as your description said. But for me, you are really special personality. You are my friend, as I said. You are my personal coach, I can say. And you are incredible personality, full of compassion and full of always readiness to help others. Okay? And what is also worth mentioning, you are really the very first founding member of the Success, No Sacrifice movement. So right now we are really getting through, and we have already more founding members, but you are really the very, very first one. So appreciate it.
That's great. I feel like I've won already.
So a few words about the podcast. So in this podcast, also saying to the people that will be watching us later, so we aim to challenge the common belief that success requires sacrifice. And this is something which is like the key aim. So of course, we acknowledge the fact that we talked this earlier. We acknowledge the fact that we will, as a business people, as entrepreneurs, we require sacrifice sometimes. So there is a point in our life that we will require sacrifice. It's not the sacrifice is completely not needed, but the danger that comes really with that is that accepting this role as a rule of life could really change our identity. And when we really believe that success always requires sacrifice, so we go too easily with the other facts in our life, with the sometimes, let's say, sacrificing our family, sacrificing our development, our growth, and so on and so on. So what we believe, and this is also the key statement of our movement, that success should expand life, not consume it. And many entrepreneurs have learned how to build successful business. That's what we state. But very few really learn how to build successful life. And I'm happy to have you here, Jan, because for me, you are like the shining star on the firmament, saying, yes, you are the one who builds successful life. And you can you can elaborate on this one, but we will see as we go. So, Jan, let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. Okay, so what inspired you to become an entrepreneur? And this is really the long journey for you right now.
Yeah, it is. Well, funny enough, thinking about like the very start, when I was in school doing what was then O-levels, so GCSEs now sort of age 16, I decided at that point that I wasn't going to stay on at school to do A-levels because I wanted to do business studies. And they didn't do business studies in my school. It wasn't a thing. I mean, we are talking about a long, long time ago. And this was sort of all new. That business studies at those times, that was sort of quite a new thing. And I didn't know why I wanted to do it. I just knew I did. And my teachers were sort of really shocked because my geography teacher wanted me to do geography, my English teacher wanted me to do English, My art teacher wanted me to do art. There was sort of things going on. And I was saying, no, I'm not coming back to school because I need to go to college to study business studies. And looking back on this, I really find it quite bizarre because I was 15 at the time. I had no business role models. My mum was a stay-at-home housewife. My dad was a stockman on a farm. I didn't have any family members in business, anything, but I wanted to study business. And so if you think about it, like at 15, like how do you know that? And that's what I did. And I went on to study business studies. I got a fantastic placements within the health service, like a graduate training program. But it was just for A-level students. I was able to do 2 years there, always studying. So it was a fantastic opportunity. So really, that is where it started. Something really deep inside, something I wasn't consciously thinking about, something I didn't know or understand, but I just knew that was the path I wanted to follow.
I can tell you, it's incredible. Yes, because, we also talked this before, and right now I am coming with this series of spark in life. Yes, and how these kind of sparks, these moments in life are really able to influence the whole path of your life. And you at 15, it was kind of the spark. Yes, and you say that you don't know where it was coming from. There was no like rational explanation where it could come from, but it came, and it was really so obvious for you at so early age that you want to do it. Yeah. So, you partially answered this, but I really would like to dig a little bit further. So what do you think could really cause this if you had no evident reason for going this path? Why you really wanted to do it?
I don't know. I don't know then. I don't think I really knew then, except I just knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but right now, is it any clearer?
Well, yes, it is clear. Okay. It is clear because I know it was right. I know 100% it was right. I mean, I was lucky. I got a few sort of roles within the health service. And even then, I was still studying, always had business in mind because my training would have been for hospital administration. That's where the training would go. So it's very much business. And I think already then I was getting frustrated with like public service. So you could see so many opportunities, see mistakes, see areas of inefficiencies and so on. And so that frustration for me, it was always like, it can be better. But when you're trapped in a sort of institution, you don't have an opportunity necessarily to make it better because there's too many things you have to conform with. I think it was already then a very big growth sort of mindset that I was always learning, from when I got married, when I had children, I was always studying. I was always on doing some kind of course or some improvement, some personal development stuff. There was a real sense of growth.
Okay, I understand it. So can you tell me, just a little bit moving forward, can you tell me your first business experience or first entrepreneurial experience? Can you tell me about it?
Okay, it's not very glamorous. I can tell you that. But both John and I, so let's go into so I was married young. I was married very young. And both John and I worked in the public sector. I worked in the health service. John worked in the public sector. He was trained as a PE teacher, but he went straight into leisure centre management. And it was late 70s. 1978, that sort of time, when interest rates were 17%. So you just can't imagine. And we had bought our first house, so we were both working. We saved up the deposit. We bought our first house, absolutely brilliant. And then we decided we were going to have a family straight away. I was pregnant. I decided I wanted to give up my job to have my children, which again was something that, like, people say, well, no, you can't do that. You have to keep working. You've done all this now. You must carry on working. And I decided I would give up my job. And then on one wage and then 17% interest rates. Mm-hmm. That was
it's a killer.
we just couldn't make ends meet. We just couldn't pay our way. And so what we actually did, because John's dad used to own a fish and chip shop, and in his obviously in his teenage years, he used to work in the fish and chip shop. And to my absolute horror, he found a fish and chip shop on the North Wales coast, and it came with a flat, it came with accommodation, and we ended up buying it. And it was just such complete and utter change from what we'd been in already in sort of the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And we moved to North Wales and we moved into this little flat. I'd already got one baby. I didn't know at the time, but I was already pregnant with our second daughter. And that's what we started. And we paid off everything. We paid off our mortgage. We had enough to buy the little place, and we lived. And we went from that to 4 years later, because it was a very successful little business. And we learned such a lot because it was just the two of us. You have to learn every single skill.
Yes.
We had to learn about, doing our accounts. We had to learn about marketing the business, and being part of the community, doing your sort of PR, getting all those sort of things doing. It was such a huge learning curve. Even things like, getting our own private pension, mm-hmm. Just understanding that, wow, this is so different. This is you having to stand on your own 2 feet. You're not part of a big organisation, not part of an institution. It's like everything you do, you're responsible for, and it's only you that can do it. Only you
That's
can
true.
pay your way.
So it was really like the hard way of learning the business.
It was a really hard way.
With one small child, the other on the way. And and afterwards, of course, with 2 kids. So unbelievable. But if you look back right now, at this challenging experience, how did you define success at that point of time?
Well, it's very strange, but I think a lot of people who are in business are already considered successful. So if you think about the community that we were in, and the fact that we owned a fish and chip shop, mm-hmm. It was really no great shakes, but we were business people.
It was incredible learning field. So I think that.
Yes.
So that's what you said. So I think that it was great experience, and also something that gave you the boost for the future, because you said it was very successful. So I think that, you should give all the credit to fish and chips business.
It got us started. Yeah. It did. Yeah. It did get us started because, so it's interesting. So in the eyes of the community, we were already successful, if you like, because we had run the business. And interestingly, like, some colleagues thought we were mad doing it, and other colleagues really, I can remember one chap literally smacking John on the back with a really big pat on the back. Good on you, he said, go for it, because he'd been trapped in a sort of institutional career. And I think he saw John, making that leap. But we did end up then moving to a really lovely house with another business, another takeaway foods business, where we did other little enterprises as well alongside of it. But 4 years after that, 4 years after not being able to pay our mortgage, we were able to buy a small country house hotel. Okay. And it was the most beautiful, idyllic. So going, from 4 years to not being able to pay your mortgage to suddenly being able to get, and it was beautiful. It's on the Shropshire Welsh border, so the English Welsh border in North Wales. a beautiful country house, 4 acres of grounds, glass-back squash courts, tennis courts, little pool in the garden,
Wow.
40-seater
Sounds
restaurant.
great.
And you look at that and think, wow, how did that happen that we're able to do that?
Jan, but coming back to my question, and you can use the second, let's say, business for that, because you said that, yes, the society already considered you as a successful people. But for each single of us, regardless of the stage of our life, we look at the success differently. Yes? So people can consider us successful, but we have our own opinions. We have our own feelings and our own, let's say, look at the situation. So with the first or the second, just tell me, how did you define the success for you at that point of time, for yourself personally, when you were probably not thinking about success as such, but right now, tell me, how did you feel at that point of time, or how would you describe it today? How you felt at that time?
Well, I can tell you exactly one of the feelings that we felt, because when we bought the hotel, we ended up living in the attic, because there wasn't really accommodation, but there was an attic room, and then there was a little room at the back. And the very first night when we slept at the hotel, we slept in the attic, and in the attic there was, we were able to have our bed on one side of this huge beam, and on the other side were the children's 2 single beds. And we had to go under the beam to the children, and the children had to come under the beam to us. And
so how many bruises you had on your head?
Yeah, exactly. On my back, usually.
Yeah, on the back, you're right.
Yeah. And I remember lying in bed on the first night and seeing the eaves of the roof.
Yeah.
And having moved in that day and taken in everything that we'd done to get there, I just thought, oh my goodness, what have we done? The enormity of it suddenly hit. And so at that time, in terms of success, you're right, you don't think about that at the time. You don't think about success. You just think about striving, about working, about the next day, about what you've got to do, the next day. So you're not really looking at it from outside, or even looking for those feelings of success or anything. It was all about the doing. At that time, it was the doing. Interestingly, I can remember that 4 of my teachers, who I hadn't seen for quite some time, they lived in the area of the hotel, and they came to the restaurant, and I was so pleased to see them. It was just fantastic, and I offered to show them around the hotel, and I showed them the squash courts and everything else, and it was the weirdest thing, but I could tell they felt proud of me.
And did you feel proud of yourself at that time?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I did. In a way that I'm looking at them, who they'd been my teachers, and I'm looking at them with this completely different, the way that they were sort of responding to me, the way they were talking to me, and they said, like, well done, and so on.
So this was this moment of pride. I believe that this was the moment of feeling real success, yes? Because you, with all the things you went through in the first years, so it was probably the first moment of success. Even you didn't maybe look at this at that time in this way.
I do remember sort of feeling that I was going, sort of, what, me? Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
And so again, it's about perception, isn't it? About other people's perception of you. So they saw that as sort of as success in their eyes. it was success.
Wasn't it?
And
I think it was. It was great success. Based on what you are saying, I would say coming from feelings of despair and like questioning your decisions, like hitting the beam
yes,
with your back all the time. You move to the hotel and all these beautiful premises ownership and management. So I think
yes,
it was incredible change just within few years.
yes,
So yeah, I think
yes, it
you should
was.
be really proud of it. So if you look back right now, if you with all the experience of your life and there were ups and downs, so did feeling of success or like definition of success changed? Do you see it differently today? Or how it was developing over years? Yes, because we said at the
Yeah,
very beginning you didn't really quote it as a success. You
yes,
felt it, I believe, but yeah.
yes. Well, I think it would be worth just sharing the end bit of that story,
Yeah.
because this is a business podcast, so
Sure,
I
please
think
do so.
people, yeah, in business, I think there's always lessons to learn, isn't there? And I'm just saying this because I think this is really relevant, because we ended up losing everything.
Okay.
In the hotel. We ended up losing everything, and it wasn't something that we could see, that we could foresee happening. What happened was there was an opportunity, a thing called a business expansion scheme that was available at the time, and we'd got a beautiful walled garden in the hotel, and we thought it would be great if we could do log cabins. So we were going to build 4 log cabins. We got it's a huge amount of work, but we managed to get planning permission for these 4 log cabins,
Yeah.
and then that way it would really increase the occupancy for the hotel and be able to use the facilities. More people use the facilities, and so on. And then we were looking for a way of how do we fund this? And our accountant said there's this thing called a business expansion scheme. And I'm telling this story, Pawel, because I think it comes with the learning, the warnings, the acceptance, the naivety, and all that kind of thing that happens to people in business. Remember, we were still very young and quite sort of naive. So the thing with the business expansion scheme is that investors put money in and they get a very good tax break on the money that they put in. For us, what we had to do was create a limited company, and so that they could put the money in. So this was all dealt with by our accountant, and we created, John and I went off and bought a limited company, and then the people were able to invest in the money. And as a result, we had to have like a chairman who was a guy from an insurance company who the accountant introduced us to, and we all had to have the bank on our side. And so that was also a person that the accountant introduced us to. And he was our sort of bank manager. So they were the 3 sort of influence people, if you like. And that was a big change for me and John, because it'd always been just me and John, and we did, what we want, how we thought it was right, do it, yeah, okay, get on with it. We waited and waited and waited for the money to come across, but it never did sort of come across. It sat in a bank account, and I was, constantly asking, well, when can we start? When can we make some progress? And eventually I ended up having a set of accounts. And this is the first set of accounts that we'd had as a limited company. And so I had to ring the accountant and say, look, there's some things on here that don't make any sense to me. I don't understand. I need to meet, let's have a chat about. And he said, well, it was actually the accountant's sister. Can I help you with anything? And he said, I said, well, yeah. I said, for starters, I said, John and I aren't down as shareholders. And he said, no, you're not. So I said, you mean we're not down as shareholders in this, or we're not shareholders? And he said, you're not shareholders.
Okay. So what was your let's say, legal status at that time?
Exactly. And that's another whole sort of story. As it happened, we ended up staying. John was, we asked a few more questions. John was absolutely furious. He went to get a job because he said he couldn't carry on sort of doing what he was doing in the hotel.
Yeah.
We stayed almost 12 months. This was the February. we ended up leaving in the November. I kept the hotel running, everything all to do with absolutely everything. John kept all the sports side going. And we were waiting and waiting until they did the right thing and showed us that we were the main owners and that the new people who put the money in were the smaller percentage as the owners.
Yeah.
And in the end, we said, we can't wait any longer. And we ended up leaving, and they found a couple who were basically only used to running a pub to come in and look at, run the place. And we I actually went and asked for an amount of money at that moment in time so that we could put a deposit on a house, effectively. And with some struggle and with actually causing a bit of a scene in the bank and refusing to go or leave the bank when it was closing. And I said, I'm not leaving until I've got this amount of money. And the bank manager was the guy who was involved, so he knew the score. So we got that. We got a house. We moved out. And at that point, I didn't feel like we lost, because I thought, well, that's okay, because we will get our money and then we can start again. And 6 months later, the whole thing went bust, and everything we owned went bust with it.
I understand.
So
Jan, I think that it's incredible story, yes, and for me the point is, because I know that you bounced back, that you got your businesses running again, and there were some ups and downs again later. But one thing I would like to learn from you, on top of the great stories you are sharing, over all these years, over all these challenges, great successes, some let's say moments of disappointment or maybe, but as you said, even in this situation, you didn't really feel like losing. Okay, so but what entrepreneurship taught you about yourself?
That I am so much stronger than I thought ever possible. That I can bounce back from just about anything.
Incredible.
That resilience.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we just, both of us completely had to retrain. John ended up doing retraining. I was threw myself into more personal development. I did my postgraduate studies then for marketing. This is all while still running a young family and doing all sorts of little jobs. And then eventually John retrained in financial services, and we ended up starting a new business, a financial services business, which was for fee-based high net worth individuals. So it was financial planning. So it was quite unique in the day. It wasn't, we didn't have a shop front on the high street. It was doing financial planning for high net worth individuals who really wanted to understand their finances. Okay. And it was from that business, as that grew, we ended up creating another business, because we ended up dealing with dentists and helping dentists with their financial information. And then we came across the same issues for dentists. They were all struggling with the NHS contract at the time in the UK. And so we created something that was going to help them. And as a result, our sort of financial service business was like this, and we started the other business here. Yeah. And then slowly this grew. So you're going from doing like 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours, 80 hours, until you think, well, and then we let the financial services business go, and then really concentrated on this business, which ended up being a huge success, which is a business that we did end up selling.
Great.
And to a height that we just could not have imagined. When you go to the bank and they say, oh, you want a business plan, they want a business plan, and what are the forecasts? And I mean, we couldn't have even dreamt of the success that business had. We couldn't have even given them those numbers.
Jan, I think these are great stories. But I want to dig a little bit, let's say, more with just about you, yes, because you said something important. You said that the entrepreneurship taught you, or you learned from all your experiences, that you are much stronger than you expected before. But after all these years, how it makes you feel?
I feel content. I feel I look back on because we had, even after that and that success, then we ended up with another property project, and then we did that right in 2008 when the property market collapsed, and there's another financial crisis, and then there's another sort of challenge, and again you just dig deep and you find those resources and you get creative and you find a way out. So I look back on our business life because, let's face it, it's like over 40 years in business, more. And I sort of look back and almost quite ask that question of myself, look back and think, wow, who was I then, or who am I now, that I can look back and say, wow, that's what we did. That's how I behaved. So yes, it makes me feel strong, content, happy.
Okay. Strong, content, happy. Yeah, because I wanted to dig more, but I'm happy that you started, because content was a little bit soft considering all the things you achieved. But yes, happy rings the bell for me.
Yeah. No regrets, Pawel, no regrets, because all of it was part of the learning. All of it was part. I mean, we could have done without a lot of the hard times. But I wonder if we hadn't gone through those experiences, what would have happened? Where would we be? So it's all part of the journey. I know it sounds corny, but that's the thing, because as an entrepreneur, I was always happy working. I loved that. I don't remember sort of getting up and thinking, oh, it's another day. When we had our business, I absolutely loved that particular business, dental business. I loved going to work every single day. I loved it. When we did the property development, that turned into a massive challenge, and absolutely massive. We were so in debt. We borrowed so much money to do this incredible building, which was Coutts Bank. It was originally Coutts Bank, the international headquarters on the Isle of Man. And we bought it to convert it into luxury apartments with a swimming pool and everything, absolutely beautiful. And we travelled a lot. As part of being in business, we still did take time off and found time off and found time to take the children on holiday and have those lovely experiences. And they weren't grand, to start with. But it was still sort of travel and growth.
So that's great, Jan. I think that I wanted to ask you one question, but probably I have to park it for a moment, because there is one important question that came to my mind and I want to ask you, because we started with something about success at the beginning. What is really important for me to learn from you, how you describe success today. Yes, because you mentioned about that whenever you did the entrepreneurial, let's say, work and duties, so you never felt bored. You always felt happy. That's what I'm getting between the words that you are saying. But you also mentioned about the travel. You also mentioned about vacation with kids, and I know that you are really the family person, the family woman. So how you define success today?
Okay, right. I'm going to give you an answer to that. I have ridden an ostrich. Okay?
Okay.
And the reason, right, that's just popped into my head because my success is my family. My success is who I am, how I relate to people, my respect for humans. And the reason why I say about I've ridden an ostrich is because I have 2 daughters and I have 7 grandchildren. And my grandchildren thought it was the coolest thing when I told them that I had ridden an ostrich. And I thought of all the things. So if you want a measurement of success, my grandchild, one of the girls, the granddaughter, she was having a little argument with her friends. I was driving my 7-seater sort of granny mobile, and I could hear there was a little bit of an argument going, and it was getting slightly louder and slightly more heated. And suddenly Edie said to her friends, "Well, my granny has ridden an ostrich." And it just no one had anywhere to go from that. The reason I share the story is because I love business. And like we said, at 15, whatever it was, I had that spark. I love business. I did my Chartered Institute of Marketing qualification after my business studies. And I did it, so I followed that. I studied NLP, which was like transformational for me. All those things, and I love business, and I much prefer if we're having coffee in a cafe, I'm really happy talking to people about their business, their marketing, their product development, what they're doing, how they're recruiting, all those kind of things. I'd much rather do that than talk about the price of a loaf of bread or whatever. I can't help it. If I go into somewhere, I straight away looking like, oh, they need to sort that reception area out, or there's a bit of a bottleneck there, or something's going on. I love business, but I love my family. My family is the absolute priority for me. And I feel that I'm more grounded in business because I have a handle on family life, what goes on, all the day-to-day stuff, the dog needs to go to the vet, something's happened with the house, the roof's leaking, whatever. And I'm a better granny because I have something vital in my life that business has given me who I am. So, and together, so I'm a sensible family person. If I sit at a board table, I can discuss strategy, management, finances, whatever. But I know that I'm dealing with 8 or 10 people around the table who are all humans, who've all got crap going on, who are all struggling or striving or thriving or whatever. So it makes me a more human member of business. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in my personal life and my family life, yes, I can make some decent scones and I can put on a spread and do a nice Sunday lunch and all those kind of things. But it makes me more sort of vital with my grandchildren and my children and my friends and family, hopefully, because I've had this energy of being an entrepreneur.
No.
So that's the reason why I say I've ridden an ostrich, because my grandkids think it's cool that I've ridden an ostrich. And so, this businesswoman, this vital person, and this is my granny and she's ridden an ostrich, and bang. And that's my whole, it's the yin and the yang, if you like, of who I am.
I love it, Jan. And I think that because when you were saying these incredible stories and talking about yourself, your family, your business, your, let's say, growth adventure, because you constantly are growing as a person, you are learning. So when you were 15, you literally were inspired by something. Let's call it spark. Yes, and you knew exactly what you want to do. And of course, you can say that over all these years, the business taught you many things, and that's who you are today. But I have the feeling, very strong feeling, that already at 15, you are very strong in terms of understanding your values and understanding, to some extent, your purpose in life. And it was not something that probably you could put in few sentences and explain it to yourself and to somebody else, but it doesn't matter. You had a strong feeling of that. And the whole your life was really, I believe, it was really in full alignment with these values, with this purpose. Yes, you were, and I keep very often talking about 3 lives, and you are like perfect example that you can have it all. You can have flourishing business, you can have a beautiful family, loving family, and you can also have very rich inner self. Yes, when you invest in yourself, when you live your life fully. So I personally believe, that it's impossible to draw a direct conclusion and say that you are who you are because of the business. You are who you are because of the strong base that you started with, and very likely sticking to your values and following your purpose from the early ages through all these challenges. You said something that that made me smile. You said that no regrets, that even if there was that the times were really tough, you enjoyed really doing what you were doing. So
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it when the times were tough. I wouldn't say enjoyed it. But on reflection, you look back and think, okay, what happens? Because, and sometimes you just never know. It's so sliding doors moment, isn't it? I was talking to a lady who got out of her marriage very young with 3 small children, and the 3 grown-up children now have sort of questioned, well, wow, that was a crazy thing to do, must be a bit irresponsible, whatever, and they are where they are now. And the mother was able to say, well, we'll never know what would have happened had I stayed, because you don't know if it was an unhappy relationship and she'd have stayed in that relationship, then what would have happened? And so it's a bit like that in business. You make decisions, things happen, you deal with them, and you come out of them the way you come out. Like because we lost everything at the hotel, we had to really double down on everything and redefine ourselves, retrain, find other avenues, find ways, be resourceful. And as a result of that, we ended up having a business which made us millionaires. We just could not have sort of imagined that. And it does teach you. It does teach you a lot. So I can look back and think, yes, of course, there's some things that would have been better if it hadn't had to happen like that. No. But if it hadn't have happened, would that have been? We use the word spark. Would have the circumstances been the spark to create something, even better? So I think the lesson is because I've been so fortunate, because I had my children young, and so I've had my grandchildren young, and so I've been able to have those 3 lives, and the priorities have always been there. And you were saying about success. And there was something else you said about success and no sacrifice. Well, when I think about it, I probably did make sacrifices, but I didn't see them as sacrifices at the time. I saw them as choice. No. I saw them as boundaries. I saw them as decisions, because like most of the time, like when the children were little, I could find a way, one way or another, with the hotel, that I could go to the Easter Bonnet Parade or the ballet recital or the children's nativity play, or I kind of was able to do that, so I didn't feel like I was missing out. So I think it's interesting when you talk about sacrifice and like how do you determine that? Because I do see it in business. I do see that people are, the business is the be all and end all, and nothing comes close to it, and I think that's really, really sad.
That's true.
When people are, no, I must work 90 hours a week. I must stay late. I must go early. I must be the one that's there when such and such happens. And there's so many lessons in that. And their lessons come around the choice, the boundaries, the decisions, the delegation, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about sacrifices. You said, okay, I didn't look at the sacrifices or many sacrifices as sacrifices, but as choices. And I think, at the end of the day, what we really do in our life is literally the sequence of decisions. We decide. Yes. The challenge that I see in me from the past and in many other people is that when really engrave in our mind certain limiting beliefs like success requires sacrifice, so we go too easily with some choices. And we go and we say, okay, that's how it goes. My family will be important for me in 5 years' time. Right now, I couldn't care less because that's how the life goes. And I think, and after years, very often we don't look at this was my choice. We look at this, no, this was the necessity. And I think very often we should ask ourselves the question, not from the distance looking back in time, but every time we make choices, how these choices are influencing each of our free lives. And
Yes.
And I promote very often, and people are very often expressing disappointment with me because I very often say our life must be selfish in a good way. Yes, we have to look at we have to think about ourselves first. If we want to really make our family happy, we have to be happy. How we make anybody happy if we are unhappy, if we are really disappointed, if we are constantly struggle inside our mind. If we want to really grow as a person, so also we have to think about ourselves. We cannot always think, okay, but I have to dedicate time for somebody else. I still have to find the alignment between free lives, but I have to give each life something that it requires. And I have to look at me first. It's like my famous comparison that you use. It's like this, this air mask in the plane. You have to first put it on before you can help anybody else. You cannot help everybody else and afterwards like faint. Yes, it makes no sense. You will have children that will be with mask, but they cannot help you. So I think that's how the life goes. So your story is incredibly powerful, Jan, and this podcast was originally set like, okay, let's talk to the people that see that their life was not really as they expected. Yes, that it came with certain challenges, and they try to reset this now. But you are incredible example that you can have it all.
I don't know. That sounds really odd. I think one thing I will say is that I've noticed the cyclical pattern. Mm-hmm. So we struggled. We sort of had it all as two young married people on good money. And we bought our house, and then we obviously came to struggle. And then we ended up with our first business. And then that became successful. And then we came with our second business, which looked like, wow, the hotel. And then we ended up losing everything. So down we went again. And then we grew and come out of that, set up another business. Each time, the sort of spiral, it gets more expansive. So then the next business was like, wow, even bigger and became that. And that was fantastic. When we sold, we were on a bit of a high at that point, but still very young. and too young to retire. I didn't want to retire at all.
If you do what you love, why should you retire at all?
Exactly. So we took another project on, and then we took this huge property development project, but then that was sort of all starting, and then the property crash happened. And again, then you think, no, surely after all we've learned, all we know, we can't be in this situation again, because we had borrowed from the bank. And at that point, the banks were closing down businesses in the property crash, especially properties. They were closing down businesses all over, and I had to come up with something. And I mean, we were in debt. We owed the bank at that point 4 million quid. It was it wasn't an insignificant amount of money. And we had to find a way of saying to the bank, no, you must keep servicing this loan, because the loan we had, and it was more than that, the loan we had was to be repaid by selling the properties. But of course, nothing was selling. The property crash just completely obliterated sales. So we had these beautiful apartments developed and no way of selling them. So at that point, we created a rental company. And because we couldn't rent out of the property development company, so we created a rental company. And I just got 3 apartments ready, dressed them, decorated them absolutely beautifully. I mean, real high end, because that's what the property was. It was really high end.
Yeah.
And they rented like that. And I went to the bank and did the little spreadsheet and said, look. And he said, yeah, well, that's good. 3 rentals coming in. So I did another 4. And so then we had those apartments, and I went to the bank and said, look, we can service this debt. I thought, there's no way you can close me down. You can't call in this loan, we're servicing it. Of course, you had, and this is business, so this is the reality of business. So we had, every time we paid some money off, we would charge an exit fee. Every time we renewed the facility, which was every 6 months, we had a renewal fee. This is how the banks make their money,
exactly.
isn't it? But nevertheless, we were able to fund the debt. And that was the secret. Whereas a lot of businesses just close their doors, go, right, we can't sell. What are we going to do? But you've got to get creative. And those are the things, when you say like what comes to you or whatever, it's just amazing how when the chips are down, you can dig deep and come up with a solution. And then slowly, I think it was 2011 was our first sale. And then we were able to slowly, as they started to sell, we were able to pay the bank back and then obviously reduce our debt until we'd paid it all off. And, we survived again.
So, Jan, I think that there were a lot of like the ups and downs. There were a lot of like bouncing back. The question is, what strengths, or let's say what attitude to our life or whatever else, what really made you bouncing back constantly again and again with probably and becoming stronger every time?
I don't know, but I suppose survival is one of the most basic instincts. And I guess you have that across many levels.
I don't buy it, Jan. I don't buy it. What survival? If survival would be the main driver, you would just go for the paid job, and without really fulfilling your dreams.
But I mean, at a sort of basic level, if you think about it, how we built our life. So like had success, sold a business, wow, amazing. And then suddenly we're in debt again with something completely out of our control, a global crisis, financial crisis. And we're suddenly victim of that global financial crisis. The instinct of, my God, I'm not letting that go. I'm not letting all those years. That's the survival bit. I mean, the fight, the courage. But the 2 things for me in business that I think are 2 of the most important things is, number 1 is flexibility. because I believe in focus. I believe in, having that thing, people say you must niche and you know exactly who your client is and all those kind of things. Yes, I get all that. And you have focus in what you're trying to achieve and gosh, nothing like a crisis gets you more focused. When I realized that right, okay, what we need to do is just get this debt out the way. We must pay this debt off. That has to be the focus. It was the only thing. Will this sell an apartment?
This could be called switching to survival mode. Yes. But at the same time, using your creativity, using also your risk-taking capabilities that you developed over years. So yes. I think that, because survival mode means for most of the people, like for me also, it meant something different. But you're right, yes. You just have to be creative if you don't want to give up on your dreams. Yes, because you could easily say, okay, fine, I failed and I go back to whatever I hate.
Yes. And the other thing is, for me, the flexibility. So you have to be flexible because, we had a plan and then circumstances change and you've got to be able to adjust.
Yeah.
That to me is really fundamental, as well as, of course, focus and all the other things. But flexibility, I think, is very... And I see so many people who have this dogged, absolute vision of, right, I'm going to do this, and this. And I can remember a friend, actually, and he said he was going to open an office, a branch of his business for every child he had. And so the first one was called after the child, and then the second one he bought and was called after the child. And very quickly, child number 3 was coming, and they ended up having 5 children. But at child number 3, I remember that the property stuff was already starting to happen, and I just had to challenge him. And I'm saying, look, I think this plan of a branch for every child, I think you really need to think again. And thankfully he did, and he did only end up with two branches, which was completely the right thing to do. So that's the difference between that focus and dogged determination to actually, I need to be a bit more flexible now and do that. And the other thing is resilience. It is, I know it sounds corny, but that ability to stand anything, to bounce back after whatever adversity, and to keep going, to keep going. So flexibility, so you can adapt, so you can adjust. I'm a real big believer in that. I don't know if it's a female thing, a female sort of trait, whereas maybe a male trait is more naturally to stay focused and, you're going after the deer and you've got the spear and that's all that matters. I don't know if that's part of, it's just my own personal view, but I do believe that flexibility is...
I don't know either, Jan, to be frank, because I personally believe that we very often impose on ourselves just echoing what society is teaching us. Yes, we say this is the man's trait, this is the woman trait. Of course, there are specific traits. We are different. Yes. But the point is that I think, unfortunately, society very often is justifying some decisions for ourselves. And this is not healthy. I think that definitely women with the natural, let's say, inclinations and definitely different approach to life are able to cope with all these things. And the emotional part I really value the most because in men, it's very often hidden and forbidden. Yes, yeah. So I know a lot of men that are very sensitive and they fight with themselves for the entire life to not show to the external world that they are as they are, and this is not healthy. I think that that diversity helps us in many instances. It's not topic of this podcast, but it's incredible topic that I definitely believe it would be great to touch one day on.
Yes.
because it's something that make our life better, more rich, and more successful. At the end of the day, if we acknowledge the differences, if we acknowledge the sensitivities and the strengths in ourselves and in others. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Jan, I would like to still ask you a couple of questions. The one, because I think one thing is obvious, and correct me if I say something wrong, but one thing becomes obvious for me when I hear your story, and I know that this is much longer story, and I would be delighted if you agree to join me again in the future, because we have more things to share and more things to make people learn from as far as your story is concerned. But so what is really obvious for me, that whatever happened to you, you were really staying aligned with your values, with your purpose, with the things that really were important for you. And this helped you to really bounce back. This helped you to really go farther, to even go for something bigger than before, instead of giving up and like... Of course, the farther you go, it's harder to neglect all the things that are behind you. But I would like to hear the story, or maybe there is the story that you can tell us about when you had to compromise on something that is important for you, that was always important for you. And can you tell us about such a situation in your life that after years you said, okay, this probably it's not as it should be. This was maybe not sacrifice, but it was the decision that was not in line with how I used to act in my life.
It's
You don't have to answer, Jan. I think that it's okay. I surprised you with this question, but this comes after what we talk right now, which completely is outside of any script, which I love.
No, absolutely. I'm perfectly fine. Interestingly, because the thing that came up, obviously, it was a question you just asked me. It's personal, it's family, it's, hang on a minute, I'm going to get it out, and then I think you'll understand.
Take your time. Take your time.
My mum didn't get to see it.
Yeah. But you had no chance to influence that. You couldn't influence this, Jan. So it was definitely nor her choice, neither yours. But if your mother is still alive, yeah, I know that your father passed away. I'm really sorry for that, just days ago. But if your mother is still alive, what you would like her to know?
There isn't anything that she would have to know, because she would have experienced it all.
Yes,
she would have been
true.
on the journey, because she was there for obviously the first part. She died young she died 64. But she didn't see her great grandchildren. She didn't see my grandchildren. She didn't see how my two daughters have become unbelievably successful and entrepreneurs in their own right. Going back to the question, I think you were asking, is there any time when I couldn't behave as I wanted to behave? In business, is there times when, I think the question was something along those lines, wasn't it? Where you don't stay in your values with your values. And I can't think of anything at the minute, in business. But what I can think of is the times when I was perhaps expected to behave in a certain way, mm-hmm. and I didn't. And that's because I stood up for my values. And
okay.
so I really doubled doubled up, if you like, not doubled down, but doubled up. And one in particular, it was to do with when we were looking at potentially selling the business. And we had a big meeting with KPMG, all male. And a lot of my working life has been very much, if there's ever any hierarchy, it was always male. And it didn't bother me at all.
Which is good.
Because
that's what means sticking to your values. Yes.
Yeah.
you couldn't care less about the authority which is not coming behind the values, but comes just because of the name in front on the front door.
Yes, exactly. So we were in this meeting, and there were certain things being sorted, and and then we got to this point, which was involved £300,000, and it was almost like a whitewash in terms of expectation as to what was going to happen with this. And I completely disagreed with it. And I said, look, we have to talk about this. So we had a sort of conversation, and there was a little bit of glancing of the other people in the room as to, oh gosh, didn't expect that, but we'll be okay, carry on.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't go past this. And if we can't sort it out, then I'm just going to have to leave the meeting, and we'll have to come back to it. You'll have to rethink, and we'll have to come back to it. And I stood up and left the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, as I was walking out, I could see them all looking at John, and John was looking at them, and then he was looking at me, and I was looking So, as an example, I can't think of when I haven't, I can't think of an example. I'm sure there's times where I've had to perhaps not do something that's against my values, but I can think of the times when my values have driven me to the point of knowing I'm making the right decision. And on that occasion, I think I went to the ladies' room and went back and sat in reception. They come and got me back, and we got it sorted.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was the right thing to do, it wasn't that I was being, dogged about something or whatever. It was the right thing to do. We had to do it this way. It had to be the right way. I didn't like any sort of fancy footwork or deals or things going on. I just thought, nah, it's not going to work.
Very, very fair, John. Very fair. Like my famous, or let's say favorite author, but very famous psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl said, I will say in my wording, that in life we cannot choose the let's say the circumstances that we are facing, but one thing that we always can choose is attitude. And I think that's the important thing, is that even in the toughest times, and he was the concentration camp survivor, so even in the toughest time you can choose your attitude, yes. And you can stick to your values, you can give up and choose a different route, and so on. So I appreciate this example. It's a very powerful example, and I think that maybe to not make this podcast so sweet, I can say a little bit of my story. I was always considering myself like the value-based person, and I always was very clear about that integrity, respect and trust are my key values, and my principles are around my family. But there was time, and there were few years in my life that family didn't get what they should if I stick to my principles, if I stick to my values. So I completely compromised on this, and the excuse that I was using was exactly success. Let's say the sacrifice is justified by the success that I am aiming to achieve, the personal success, not the not the life success, but because I think that's exactly the point, that with the success no sacrifice movement we want to drive, that success is not only business success. We want every single person on this planet, including ourselves, to look at the success from the lens of successful life. And successful life, what you are proving with your example, is the life which is built also on very important part, which is business success. So we don't want to neglect the business success. It's important thing in our life, but this is not the only dimension of success. And the new dimension of success is literally to have successful life with really growing business, flourishing family life, and growing inner self and fulfilled inner self. So I think that's what you would like to drive, and I believe your example it's a flagship for us, because it proves that you can really stay true to yourself, and this helps you to also bounce back in all these times of despair and misery. You have the strength.
Mm-hmm. I think it is possible to have a successful life in business. And in terms of what I do, talking to other business owners, it's always with that in mind, so that, and it aligns so much with what you're saying, Pawel, in terms of success, no sacrifice, because it's just how you term sacrifice. So for us, we could have, gone on and done bigger, we could, gone global, we could have done, so much, but maybe we weren't ready, or maybe we could see ahead, maybe that there would be sacrifices we would need to make that we weren't prepared to make. So that's my point, that you have your business life and you create a successful life within the business that you want, and it creates its own boundaries. It creates its own criteria,
exactly,
if you like.
And this is your definition of success, what you were describing over last 1.5 hours. You were really describing how you see your success in life. And as you said, you could have gone global, and yes, maybe that would be the solution, but will this still mean that you can really have successful life, which is built on 3 pillars, not only on one? So Jan, very last question I wanted to ask you, and this is like the question that I wanted to ask in the middle, but we were going different ways, yes, because probably you already answered this question, but I would like you to say it again if it was the case. What advice would you give your younger entrepreneurial self today?
Wow, keep going. Keep going. Never give up, no matter what, no matter what seems like the end. It could just be the beginning of something that you might never have anticipated. Keep going. I enjoy coaching from that point of view, in that we take what's here now and we move forward with it.
Yeah.
I know you can go 10 years into therapy and dig through all the stuff that's gone and all that. But I think, for me, it's that forward motion.
Yes.
Keep going. Obviously learn. Yeah, it's just a catalogue of life's university, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, I think if I was looking back, maybe it would be, it's keep going. You're stronger than you think. You're more capable than you think. It's those sort of things.
So we have very strong message to people that are watching us. keep going. You are stronger than you believe you are. I think it's incredible message. So I know, Jan, that you are coaching entrepreneurs. And you have the opportunity to impact many people, including myself. And I appreciate it very much. So I think that's great. So thank you, Jan, so much for joining me. It was incredible experience for me. I'm sure that people will learn a lot for their life, and I hope that this will inspire them to really make the correction in their lives in case it's needed. But the most important, keep going. You are stronger than you believe, and stay true to your values. Stay true to who you are and the purpose of your life. If you have to redefine your purpose, it's completely fine. That's how the life goes. We sometimes have to reposition our life. Usually we stick to our values. We eventually pivot as far as our principles are concerned. But even if the values must change the ranking, or you have to replace one with the other, it's also okay. I think that whatever you do in life, it must be 100% yours.
Yes.
So thank you, Jan, once again.
You're so welcome. Been a pleasure. Well, most of it anyway.
Thank you so much.